Welcome friends to the World Story Channel. I am your narrator Ramis. Enjoy listening to the full history of the country of India. Do not forget to write your opinion in the comments, and we will proceed. The history of India began with the emergence of the Harappan civilization, located in the valley of the Indus River, which flourished in the 3rd millennium BC. In the 8th century BC, the Harappan civilization disappeared for unknown reasons. The Indian civilization was followed by the Vedic period, which lasted until the 5th century BC. The Vedic civilization served as the basis for Hinduism and other cultural aspects of early Indian society and culture. Starting from the 6th century BC, many Mahajanapads appeared on the territory of India, independent principalities and republics. In the 3rd century BC, most of South Asia was united into the Mauryan Empire under the rule of Chandragupta Maurya. The empire reached its greatest prosperity during the reign of the Buddhist king Ashoka III. At the beginning of the 2nd century BC, India experienced a series of attacks from Central Asia, which resulted in the formation of the Indo-Greek, Indo-Scythian, and Indo-Parthian kingdoms, as well as the Kushan Empire, on the territory of the Indian subcontinent. In the 4th century, the period of the Gupta dynasty began, which is considered to be the golden age of India. The Stone Age in South Asia. The oldest Paleolithic artifacts in Asia are stone tools, and 6-million-year-old cow bones with markings left by these tools, found by Indian-French experts in the Sivalik Hills, 300 kilometers north of New Delhi. The Acheulean tools from Atirampakam have an average age of 7 million years ago. Levallois technology tools appeared in Atirampakam about 385,000 talars, 64,000 darors years ago. At the Atirampakam site, 60 kilometers from Chennai, more than 7,000 stone tools were found, which are dated by thermoluminescence method from 172 to 385,000 years ago. A skull close to the Javanese Homo erectus, Pithecanthropus, but more progressive, was discovered in the valley of the Narmada River. It was described as a subspecies of Homo erectus narmadiensis in 1985. Dating: more than 236,000 BC, minimum date. In the location of Odai, Tamil Nadu, the remains of a 5-month-old baby were found, which are attributed either to the species Homo erectus or to early Homo sapiens. Ferricrates, iron shells, on the coast of Kerala, and similar ferricretes in Odai date back 187,000 years. Finds of the Soan culture, named after the Soan River, are found in the Sivalik Region 14. In Jwalapuram in southern India, there is no break in archaeological cultures synchronized with the Toba eruption 74,000 years ago. In the Sun River Valley in Madhya Pradesh, the Levallois stone industry in Daba locality, remained unchanged from 79. 6-3, 2000 BC to 65. 2-3, 1000 BC. Even after the Toba volcano eruption, 74,000 BC. The stone industry from Daba strongly resembles the stone tool complexes of Africa, African Middle Stone Age Century, MSA English, Arabia, as well as the earliest artifacts of Australia. Levallois technology is absent in Daba above the E layer, dated to the age of 47. 5-0,000 years ago. About 48,000 years ago, microlithic technology appeared in Daba. Based on indirect data, anthropologists G. F. Debets, V. P. Alexif suggest that the population of India in the late Upper Paleolithic was predominantly Australoid. In the south of India, archaic primitive cultures have survived to historical times. The Neolithic Revolution reached India in the 7th millennium BC. A productive economy, wheat, barley, and lentils, developed in the Indus and Saraswati valleys. The settlement of Langnaj, Gujarat, finds traces of ceramics, and human remains bear traces of a mixture of Mediterranean and Vedoid races. In the era of the Mehrgar early agricultural culture, man found an effective way to obtain food that was optimal for the region: the development of agriculture, hunting, and nascent cattle breeding, in the form of sheep farming. This created all the necessary conditions for the transition to a qualitatively new stage, the formation of a new cultural and historical complex. The roots of Indian rice farming are debatable. The most likely version is considered to be the borrowing of this culture from Southeast Asia. Traces of religious beliefs of that time are represented in the figures of snakes, nagas. The Indian civilization. In the 3rd millennium BC, the Dravidians created the first Indian civilization, called the Indian or Harappan, the cities of Rakhigarhi, Dholavira, Lothal. The Indian Dravidians had developed construction, bronze metallurgy, and small sculpture. Unlike Egypt and Mesopotamia, the Indian civilization is not characterized by monumental sculpture at all. All the saved images are small in size. Private property relations were in their infancy, and irrigation farming was at the heart of agriculture. An important role was assigned to foreign trade. The Harappan civilization had communication with Mesopotamia and Central Asia, and direct trade contacts reached Sumer and Arabia. The decline of the Indian civilization occurred in the 4th centuries BC. The exact cause of the decline has not been established, but it is known that at this time the Dravidian population shifted to the southeast and lost its former level of development, Irula. This was probably caused by the deterioration of natural conditions or migration processes that took place at that time between the Caucasus and the Indus Valley. The Vedic civilization. Around the 2nd millennium BC, Indo-Aryan migrations began, as a result of which the dominant peoples appeared on the territory of India: Hindustanis, Bihar, Bengalis, Marathas, people, etc. The main occupation of the Indo-Aryan tribes, who called themselves Aryans and spoke Sanskrit, was cattle breeding, hence the sacred cow. The striking force of their troops were chariots, ratha. The heroic epic of this period, Ramayana, even tells about trips to the island of Sri Lanka. The oldest city in India is Varanasi, located on the left bank of the Ganges. According to legends, the city was founded by the god Shiva about 5,000 years ago. Varanasi is believed to be about 5,000 years old. The Vedic period lasted until the 5th century BC. The Vedic civilization served as the basis for Hinduism and other cultural aspects of early Indian society. Ancient India. By the 6th century BC, 16 Mahajanapada principalities appeared on the territory of India too. The largest of these was Magadha, with the cities of Rajgir and Patna, now Bihar. The Nanda dynasty ruled in this principality. At this time, the Indian campaigns of the Persian king Cyrus began, who conquered the northwest Indian tribe of Gandhara and took tribute from the Asakans, that is, the Hindus of Ashwak. The acute religious crisis that led to the emergence of Shramana, Jainism, and Buddhism dates back to the same time. In 327 BC, Alexander the Great launched a campaign to conquer India. He managed to subdue some areas, but the tribes of northwestern India resisted. Having won a number of brilliant victories, Alexander refused to continue the eastern campaign and left India in 325 BC. The meeting of the ancient Greek civilization with the civilization between the Ganges and the Himalayas contributed not only to the rapprochement of India with the Hellenistic world, when Greek and partly Persian influences began to penetrate into the western regions of northern India. Indian civilization also had some influence on the development of the culture of Hellenistic countries, in particular in the fields of medicine and philosophy, gymnosophists, as well as in agriculture, domestic chicken, cotton. The Greeks were finally expelled from the Indian territories after the uprising of 317 BC, the Mauryan Empire. In the wake of the anti-Greek struggle, Punjab and the Indus Valley united under the rule of Chandragupta of the Mauryan family, who for the first time created a single North Indian power with the Indus and Ganges valleys. At the end of the 4th century BC, Chandragupta conquered the kingdom of Cambodia, Gandhara, and the adjacent regions of eastern Iran. Chandragupta's successors were Bindusara, 298-268 BC, and Ashoka, 231 BC, the most powerful ruler in the history of ancient India. After becoming king, he exterminated all his brothers and unleashed devastating wars in the south, annexing almost the entire Deccan. However, later Ashoka's tyranny was replaced by a policy of spreading goodness within the empire, the main purpose of which was the spiritual unification of the population of different parts of the vast country. An important feature was the special patronage of Buddhism, although it promised protection to all religions. The philosophy of Buddhism had deep roots in already established traditions and customs. For many centuries, Buddhism peacefully coexisted with the Vedic religion, from which it borrowed some rituals and deities. In the Ashoka era, the Brahmi script was recorded. The Mauryan dynasty was finally overthrown in Magadha, eastern India, in 180 BC. It was replaced by the Shungi dynasty, which was characterized by an extreme anti-Buddhist orientation. The Indo-Greek kingdom. In the west of India, on the contrary, the Buddhist Indo-Greek kingdom was formed, founded in 180 BC by the Greco-Bactrian king Demetrius. It is known that the ruler of the Indo-Greek kingdom, Menander Thuefund, having a Greek origin, converted to Buddhism and patronized him in every possible way. The Indo-Scythian kingdom. The great migration of peoples, initiated by the Xiongnu movement in China, led to the migration of the Yuezhi, who displaced the Central Asian Scythians, Sacs, from their nomads in about 155 BC. They, in turn, moved to the borders of Hellenistic Bactria, whose king Menander directed the energy of the nomads to further conquer India, settling them on the southeastern border of his possessions, Gandhara, Gujarat. In 80 BC, the Indo-Scythian kingdom was formed on the Indo-Bactrian border, the first ruler of which was Mai, the Kushan kingdom. In the year 20, the Kushan kingdom was formed on the territory of Central Asia, Bactria, which became Tocharistan. The Kushans were not an ethnic, but a political entity. They were based on Yuezhi, which was quickly adopted by the Bactrian language. The Kushan rulers began to attack the territory of India. By 87, they had conquered the Indo-Scythian kingdom. Under King Kanishka, the Kushan state reached its greatest prosperity, with Buddhism becoming its official religion. Mathura, now Uttar Pradesh, became one of the centers of the Kushan kingdom in India. In the 3rd century, the Kushan kingdom lost its last territories under the onslaught of Sassanid Iran. Its southern part became isolated under the rule of the Indo-Scythian dynasty as the Western Kshatrapas. The Gupta state, starting from the 3rd century, the period of the Gupta dynasty, which is considered to be the golden age of India, began in the history of India. South India was dominated by several dynasties at various times, including the Chalukya, Chera, Chola, Kadamba, Pallava, and Pandya. Under the patronage of these rulers, science, engineering, art, literature, astronomy, and philosophy flourished in India. The next unifier of northern India was the Gupta dynasty, whose king Samudragupta, 335-380, reached the Himalayas and Upper Indus in his campaigns. His son, Chandragupta the Tantufi Vikramaditya, 380-415, ushered India into the golden age of its development. However, the powerful Gupta Empire could not resist another invasion from the northwest, this time organized by the Iranian-speaking Ephthalite nomads, who in the IVV centuries created a state that included the territory of Gupta India. This event is conventionally considered the end of the ancient history of India. The Rajput period. Ephthalites, Scythians, and Yuezhi integrated into Indian society, forming communities of Gujars and Rajputs. They assumed the function of Kshatriyas and became zealous defenders of Hinduism. With their support, the Gurjara Pratihara dynasty, which ruled until the beginning of the Muslim conquest, came to power in northern India. It was the Rajputs who built the future capital of India, Delhi, in 736. In 738, they managed to repel the onslaught of the Arabs. The history of India in the Middle Ages, Delhi Sultanate. The first Muslim rulers of historical India were the Persian-speaking Ghaznavid Turks, whose capital was Lahore, now Pakistan. The first Muslim conquerors of India proper were the Ghurids, who separated from the Ghaznavids. In 1192, Sultan Muhammad Ghuri defeated the Rajputs and the territories of the modern state of Haryana and captured northern India. Sultan Qutb al-Din Aibak made Delhi the capital of India for the first time in 1206, where the Qutb minaret was built. Prior to that, his headquarters were located in Lahore. Under him, Islam spread to Bengal, the core of the future state of Bangladesh. The military aristocracy of the Sultanate was Turkic, and the official language was Persian. In 1297, the Delhi Sultans conquered Gujarat, where the Gujarati Sultanate arose, and then extended their power to Malwa, central Hindustan, and Tamil Nadu, southern Hindustan, where the Madurai Sultanate was formed. In 1398, the Turkic ruler Tamerlane launched his Indian campaign against the Delhi Sultanate. In the 14th century, another separate Muslim state appeared in central India, the Bahmani Sultanate, from which the Deccan Sultanates then emerged. To the south of them lay the Hindu Vijayanagara Empire, the Mughal Empire. In 1526, another Timurid ruler from Fergana, Babur, put an end to the Delhi Sultanate and founded the Mughal Empire. The following year, Babur defeated the Rajputs in the Agra region. The use of firearms played a significant role in his victory. The new rulers of India were called Mughals because they traced their lineage back to Tamerlane, considering him a Mongol. Later, the Mughals became a symbol of luxury, and their family heirloom Kohinoor subsequently began to adorn the crown of the English queen. Under ruler Akbar, a compromise was found between Hinduism and Islam. Agra, now Uttar Pradesh, became the capital of the Mughals. Akbar's grandson, Shah Jahan, built the famous Taj Mahal for his beloved Mumtaz Mahal by 1653. Nevertheless, several native kingdoms, such as the Vijayanagara Empire, continued to exist in the south of the peninsula, beyond the reach of the Mughals. At the beginning of the 18th century, after the death of Emperor Aurangzeb in 1707, the Mughal Empire declined, and instead the Maratha Empire took over the dominant position in the region. With the rise to power of Ranjit Singh and his coronation in 1801, the Sikh Confederation transformed into an empire stretching from Kabul and Kandahar to the borders of Tibet, with a population of 80 Muslims, 10 Hindus, and 10 Sikhs. Punjab was the heart of the state. The history of European colonies in India. Since the 16th century, several European countries, including Portugal, the Netherlands, France, and the United Kingdom, being interested in trading with India, seized power in the fragmented kingdoms of the peninsula and began a battle to establish colonies in India. The British proved to be more successful than other colonialists, and by 1856 most of India was under the control of the British East India Company. A year later, an uprising of Indian military units and kingdoms took place throughout India, which was called the First War of Independence, or the Sepoy Rebellion. It challenged the control of the British Company, but was eventually suppressed. As a result, the British East India Company was liquidated, and India came under the direct control of the British Crown as a colony of the British Empire. The exploitation of the Indian colonies was the most important source of the accumulation of British capital and the Industrial Revolution in England. Portugal. After two voyages by Vasco da Gama, 1498-1502, Afonso de Albuquerque, 1503, and the first Portuguese Viceroy of India, Francisco de Almeida, 1505, the Portuguese under the leadership of Albuquerque, 1510, captured Goa, later the capital of the Portuguese colonies in India, and in 1538 established a trading post on Googly, near present-day Calcutta. From the beginning of the 16th century to the 17th century, they had a monopoly on trade with India, but already in 1580, when Portugal joined Spain under Philip II, the interests of the former receded into the background. In 1640, Portugal became independent again, but by that time the Dutch and British had gained an overwhelming preponderance in India, So the Portuguese colonies quickly fell into complete decline, and subsequently only Goa, Daman and Diu on the west coast remained, only about 100 koloniseringsters, with 500,000 inhabitants in 1900. Netherlands. The Dutch were the first Europeans to break the Portuguese monopoly in India. In 1602, the Dutch East India Company was finally formed from several small companies. Her main trading post was in Amboina. In 1652, the first trading post was founded in Palakolu on the Madras coast, and in 1658 the Dutch took Jaffnapatam, the last Portuguese stronghold in Ceylon. Between 1661 and 1664, they took from the Portuguese all their colonies on the Malabar coast. But the Dutch supremacy in India did not last long. In 1759, they were defeated by the British at Chinsura and forced to sign shameful terms. During the wars with France from 1793 to 1815, England seized almost all of its eastern colonies from the Netherlands. After all these defeats, the Netherlands was forced to sign the Anglo-Dutch Convention in 1824, according to which they transferred to Great Britain all their possessions in India and related trade rights, so that not a single piece of land belonging to the Netherlands remained in India. France. The first French East India Company was founded in 1604. It was followed by 2nd, 1611, 3rd, 1615, 4th, 1642, Richelieu, 5th, Colbert, 1664. In 1674, Pondicherry was founded on the Coromandel coast, and in 1676, Chandernagore. The Sixth Company was formed by the merger of several East Indian, West Indian, Chinese, Senegalese trading companies, 1719. She was granted exclusive rights by the king, which were taken away in 1769. In 1790, it was destroyed by the National Assembly. Other countries: Denmark. The acquisitions of other European states in India were insignificant. The Danish colonies were more significant than the others. The first Danish East India Company was founded in 1612, the second in 1670. In 1616, Danish colonies were founded in Tranquebar and Serampore, which were subsequently bought by the British in 1845. Other Danish colonies were Porto Novo, Edova, and Gulcheri on the Malabar coast. Austria. In 1723, the Ostend Company was founded, which achieved only minor success due to the active opposition of other states and was liquidated in 1731. In 1775, the Austrian East India Company was founded, which also did not achieve significant success and closed in 1785. Sweden, Prussia. The Swedish East India Company, 1731, and two Prussian East India Companies, 1750 and 1753, were also short-lived. Of all the Europeans, only the British managed to establish themselves in India. Great Britain. The first English, London East India Company, was established in 1600. The British gradually increased their influence in India. In the middle of the 68th century, conflicts began between the states of the Indian Carnatic region, which arose on the ruins of the Mughal Empire, which were supported and directed by European colonialists in the person of the British and French East India Companies. Among the European colonialists, the main players were Frenchman Joseph François Duplessis, who became governor of French India in 1742, and Englishman Robert Clive. As a result of the three wars, the British East India Company secured a significant advantage over other European trading companies in India, and the sphere of influence of the French East India Company was actually limited to Pondicherry. In 1756-1757, Robert Clive won major military victories and firmly established himself in Bengal, gradually expanding his sphere of control or influence to the whole of India, skillfully playing on the contradictions between the Nawabs and carrying out military operations. After Clive, the post of Governor-General of the East India Company was established in India. After Bengal came under the company's control, the British introduced internal customs on its territory and monopolized the most important branches of intra-Bengali trade. Hundreds of thousands of Bengali artisans were forcibly attached to the company's factories, where they were required to deliver their products at minimum prices. Often, they were not paid anything at all. Taxes have increased dramatically, including a doubling of the land tax. In 1757, the troops of the British East India Company, led by Robert Clive, captured the wealthy Nawabadi of Bengal and looted the Bengali treasury. £5,260,000 worth of valuables were seized. The British monopolized Bengal's foreign trade, as well as the most important branches of intra-Bengali trade. Hundreds of thousands of Bengali artisans were forcibly attached to the company's factories, where they were required to deliver their products at minimum prices. Taxes have increased dramatically. The result was the terrible famine of 1769 to 1773, during which 7 to 10 million Bengalis died. In the 1780s and 1790s, famine in Bengal was repeated. Several million people died. According to the calculations of the famous American historian B. Adams, in the first 15 years after the annexation of India, the British exported £1 billion worth of valuables from Bengal. The Anglo-Mysore Wars were fought in 1767, 1799, by the East India Company for the capture of the Indian Principality of Mysore. During the three Anglo-Maratha Wars, 1775, 1782, 1803, 1805, 1817, 1818, the British took Delhi and some other territories from the Marathas, and the Maratha princes became vassals of the East India Company. In 1824, the Anglo-Dutch Convention was concluded, according to which the Netherlands transferred to Great Britain all its possessions in India and related trade rights. After the entire Indian subcontinent came under the rule of the British colonial administrations, famine began to spread to other territories. In many ways, this was the result of a deliberate policy by the British authorities to ruin local handicraft production, as a result of which the market was freed up for British manufactured goods. According to the British Governor-General in 1834, the plains of India are white with the bones of weavers. By 1840, the British ruled most of India. The rampant exploitation of the Indian colonies was the most important source of the accumulation of British capital and the Industrial Revolution in England. According to the British administration, about 2. 5 million people died during the Great Famine of 1876-1878, which hit Bombay and Madras in the first place, and about 10 million people died according to Indian data. In 1857, the Sepoys, soldiers of Indian origin in the British colonial army, rebelled, and the British authorities were able to restore their power only through great efforts and serious bloodshed. After that, instead of the abolished East India Company, India was governed directly by the Queen, from whom the Viceroy was appointed. The British built railways in India, established regular postal services, created industrial enterprises. The British government and the English language helped to unite the multilingual country into something unified and integral. This became the basis for the formation of national identity. In 1885, the Indian National Congress Party emerged. In 1890, a leftist radical movement was formed. He was led by Bal Gangadhara Tilak. British India in the 20th century. At the beginning of the 20th century, capitalism gradually began to develop in India, primarily in the textile industry, and the number of industrial workers increased. In 1911, the residence of the British Viceroy of India was moved to Delhi. Before that, his residence was Calcutta. British India entered World War I at the same time as Great Britain, which declared war on Germany on August 4, 1914. Indian troops participated in combat operations in Europe, the Mediterranean, Africa, and the Middle East. Even at the beginning of the war, the conspiratorial revolutionary activities of Indian nationalists, supported by Germany, began to pose a serious danger to the British authorities. In March 1919, a strict law on the protection of order was passed, in response to which Mahatma Gandhi, who had become a well-known public figure by that time, called for a hartal in India, that is, the cessation of economic activity, a general strike. Soon, unrest began in the country, prompting Gandhi to cancel the hartal. But by that time, the situation in Punjab had escalated. On April 13, 1919, troops under the command of Brigadier General Reginald Dyer opened fire on demonstrators in Amritsar, killing almost 400 people. In the first half of the 20th century, the Indian National Congress and other political organizations marked the beginning of the Indian national liberation movement. In the 1920s and 1930s, millions of Indians followed Mahatma Gandhi, who launched a massive campaign of civil disobedience known as Satyagraha, based on the principle of ahimsa, non-violence. In 1929, Viceroy Lord Irvine announced that reforms would be carried out in order to obtain dominion status for India. But the Working Committee of the Indian National Congress stated that there can be no real freedom until the connection with the UK is terminated. In 1930, 1931, and 1932, 3 roundtable conferences were held between representatives from the Indian side and from the government, and representatives of the 3 leading political parties in the British Parliament. Shortly after the end of the first roundtable conference, the Irwin-Gandhi Pact was concluded, according to which the Indian National Congress interrupted the action of disobedience, and the government released political prisoners from prisons. But after the end of the second conference, the Congress began to protest again. Riots broke out, and Gandhi was arrested. Under pressure from the liberation movement, the British government issued the Indian Government Act in 1935, which provided for the creation of a legislative, in fact advisory body, and the granting of voting rights to the top of Indian society. India during the Second World War. India entered the war on September 3, 1939, along with Great Britain. Soon, the leaders of the Indian National Congress demanded that the British government report on its plans for India after the end of the war. In October 1940, Congress launched a campaign of civil disobedience. In March 1942, the British government proposed to draft a constitution for the country with the help of a special elected body formed in India immediately after the end of the war. Readiness was expressed to transfer power to Indian political circles in all areas except defense. But these proposals were rejected, riots broke out, and Gandhi and other leading Congress figures were arrested. On March 23, 1942, Japanese troops landed on the Andaman Islands. On April 26, 1942, British troops began retreating from Burma to India. During the retreat to the north, the 38th and 22nd Chinese divisions were cut off from China, and they also had to make their way to India. These troops were assembled in the town of Ramgarh, in the district of the same name, where they received American weapons and equipment, and American instructors took over their training. American General Joseph Stilwell became the official commander of the Chinese forces in India. As a result, an American-led Chinese unit, the Northern Combat Area Command, appeared in British India. In 1943, a massive famine began in Bengal, from which at least 1.5 million people died. In the summer of 1943, one of the former leaders of the Indian independence movement, Subhas Chandra Bose, arrived in Singapore from Germany and began recruiting the Indian National Army from Indian prisoners of war who agreed to defect to the Japanese. Despite the fact that the commander of the 15th Army, Renya Mutaguchi, insisted on a major offensive in India in order to cause an anti-British uprising, he was given permission for only a limited operation. The battle for Imphal, which took place in early 1944, ended with the defeat of the Japanese. Together with the simultaneous Battle of Kohima, which resulted in the liberation of the encircled Allied forces in Imphal, the battle marked a turning point in the Burma campaign, part of the Southeast Asian theater of World War II. The defeats at Kohima and Imphal were the largest defeats in Japanese history at that time. In May 1944, Gandhi and other Congress leaders were released from prison. Partition of British India. In January 1946, there was a series of mutinies in the army, which began with the rebellion of Hindus who served in the Royal Air Force and were unhappy with the too slow repatriation. In February 1946, there was also a mutiny in the Royal Navy in Bombay, followed by other mutinies in Calcutta, Madras, and Karachi. Also in early 1946, new elections were held, in which Congress won in 8 of the 11 provinces. Negotiations on the partition of India have begun between the INC and the Muslim League. On August 16, 1946, Muslims declared a day of direct action demanding the creation of an Islamic national home in British India. The next day, clashes broke out in Calcutta between Hindus and Muslims, which quickly spread throughout India. In September, a new government was appointed, in which Hindu Jawaharlal Nehru became Prime Minister. The British Labour government realized that the country, exhausted by the Second World War, no longer has either international support or the support of local forces to continue to hold power over India, which is sinking into the abyss of intercommunal unrest. In early 1947, Britain announced its intention to withdraw its forces from India no later than June 1948. As independence approached, the clashes between Hindus and Muslims continued to escalate. The new viceroy, Lord Mountbatten, proposed a partition plan. In June 1947, representatives of the Congress, Muslims, the untouchable community, and the Sikhs agreed to partition British India along religious lines. Areas with predominantly Hindu and Sikh populations retreated to the new India, and those with predominantly Muslim populations to the new country, Pakistan. On August 14, 1947, the Dominion of Pakistan was founded, in which the Muslim leader was appointed Governor General. The next day, on August 15th, India was declared an independent state. The head of the Indian Union was considered the King of Great Britain, but in fact, the government was headed by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. The interests of the monarch in India were still represented by the Governor General of India, who, unlike his predecessors, was no longer called the Viceroy. Independent India. Immediately after independence, a government was formed in India, headed by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. There have been bloody clashes between Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs in the country. There was a massive migration of Muslims to Pakistan and Hindus to India. About 12 million residents became refugees, and about 5 million people died in less than a year. On January 30th, 1948, Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated by a Hindu fanatic. The rulers of the native principalities had to decide whether to join India or Pakistan. The peaceful integration of the vast majority of principalities did not cause any complications. Serious conflicts arose where the religion of the ruler did not coincide with the religion of the majority of his subjects. In Jammu and Kashmir, the Kashmir conflict, in Hyderabad, Operation Polo, and in Junagadh, the integration of Junagadh into India. The Kashmir conflict sparked a war with Pakistan in 1947-1948. Relations with Pakistan have become the main issue of India's foreign policy. In 1954, the United States entered into a military alliance with Pakistan, which forced the Indian leadership to expand contacts with China and the USSR. India was declared a republic on January 26, 1950, and the Constitution of India came into force on that day. The government of India was focused on creating a mixed economy, with only state ownership allowed in 17 leading industries. Since 1953, the implementation of a community development program in the village began, which provided for the organization of a network of institutions for the dissemination of best agricultural practices, as well as the creation of cooperative associations and panchayats. Between July 22nd and August 2nd, 1954, armed activists attacked Portuguese forces stationed in Dadra and Nagar Haveli and forced them to surrender. After India gained independence, the question arose of the reunification of French possessions with India. The settlements in Machilipatnam, Kozhikode and Surat were transferred to India in October 1947. According to the treaty between France and India, signed in 1948, the inhabitants of the remaining French territories in India had to determine their political future on their own. The governorate of Chandanagore was transferred to India on May 2, 1950, and on October 2, 1955, it was annexed to the state of West Bengal. The enclaves of Pondicherry, Yanam, Mahe, and Karikal were de facto transferred to India on November 3, 1954, forming the Union Territory of Pondicherry. The name was changed to Puducherry in 2006. But the de jure unification of French India with India took place only in 1963, when the French Parliament ratified this treaty. When 14 states were formed in 1956 on the basis of the dominant languages, the discontent of ethnic minorities was evident. In 1960, serious unrest in the state of Bombay forced the central authorities to meet the demands for its division into two new states, Gujarat and Maharashtra. The Sikhs succeeded when Punjab was divided into the majority Sikh state of Punjab and the predominantly Hindu state of Haryana in 1965. The ethnic problem became even more acute in northeastern India, where some local tribes demanded independence and raised armed uprisings for this purpose. The creation of the independent states of Nagaland, 1963, and Meghalaya, 1967, did not lead to the cessation of separatist movements. In 1961, India carried out a military operation to annex the Portuguese colony of Goa. Nehru's authority was significantly undermined in October 1962 after the invasion of Chinese troops into the territory of the Northeastern Border Agency and the Ladakh Mountains in Kashmir. Lal Bahadur Shastri, who succeeded Nehru as Prime Minister in 1964, decided to reorient the mainstream of public investment from heavy industry to agriculture and to increase the role of private and foreign investment in industry. Revolutionary-minded Maoist communists supported armed peasant riots in several states where the CPI-M operated. In the late 1960s, they organized protests by small peoples in Andhra Pradesh and members of registered tribes and castes, landless Harijans, in West Bengal, which were suppressed by the army. In 1965, the Second Indo-Pakistani War took place. The fighting did not reveal a winner. The war ended in a draw after the intervention of the United Nations. In 1966, Indira Gandhi became Prime Minister. She carried out the nationalization of 14 major commercial banks. The INC split into two wings, the ruling one led by Gandhi and the opposition one. The ruling wing triumphed over the opposition, winning parliamentary elections in 1971 and statewide elections in 1972. Indira Gandhi's popularity reached its peak in 1971 as a result of the victory in the Third Indo-Pakistani War. In 1974, India conducted underground nuclear weapons tests, thus becoming a new member of the nuclear club. But the 1975 corruption charges against Gandhi were the beginning of a movement for her resignation. In response, Gandhi imposed a state of emergency in India, which resulted in mass arrests of political opponents and widespread censorship. In the March 1977 parliamentary elections, the new Janata Party, People's Party, a bloc of opposition groups, won a landslide victory and repealed the law on the state of emergency. However, the Janata government soon fell victim to internal intrigues. Its head, Morarji Desai, resigned in 1979, and after the 1980 elections, Indira Gandhi returned to power. In June 1984, after an outbreak of Sikh terrorism in Punjab, army units stormed the Sikh shrine, the Golden Temple in Amritsar, which led to the death of Sikh leader Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale and hundreds of his followers who had taken refuge in the temple. After that, on October 31, 1984, Indira Gandhi was killed by two of her Sikh guards. She was succeeded as Prime Minister by her son, Rajiv Gandhi, who called parliamentary elections for the end of 1984 and won them convincingly. On December 3, 1984, the Bhopal disaster occurred at the chemical plant of the Union Carbide Corporation, which claimed the lives of several thousand people. In the 1989 elections, the opposition parties united around former Finance Minister V.P. Singh, who then headed a minority government. Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, who came to power in 1991, carried out decisive economic reforms in 1992 designed to modernize the country's industrial, scientific, and technical base. The reforms have turned India's economy into one of the fastest growing in the world. although the huge population and the resulting problems significantly complicate the country's economic development. Less successful was the efforts of the government of Narasimha Rao to prevent intercommunal clashes that arose after the destruction of the Babri Mosque in Ayodhya by Orthodox Hindus on December 6, 1992. India's 1998 nuclear tests have complicated its relations with most of the world's states. The last serious conflict between India and Pakistan at the moment was the Kargil War in Kashmir in 1999. In February and March 2002, there were a series of clashes between Hindus and Muslims in the state of Gujarat. From November 26 to November 29, 2008, a series of terrorist attacks carried out by a group of Islamist terrorists took place in Mumbai. In December 2019, protests began in various cities of India in connection with the adoption of a law granting Indian citizenship to non-Muslim immigrants, leading to clashes between Hindus and Muslims.